Hello and welcome back. I'm Lexi Vennetti alongside Schaff, and we have a lot of Indiana basketball to talk about today. But first we're going to talk about the women's team. They just had their senior night last night for Brenna Wise, and it was a huge honor for her. And they also had a huge win against Nebraska. But in the beginning of the game and going into the second half, they had a bit of a point drought. What happened here?
Well, they pretty much got started the way that they have been in these past few games. And, they knew coming back home, they were feeling really good about how everything went, against Minnesota in the last game, and really just seeing how things are progressing as they head into the Big Ten tournament. And they're able to clinch that 4 seed, which is nice. But at the same time, they started to fall into a little bit of a drought, as you mentioned there. And then in the fourth quarter, they turned it on with people like Patberg and Penn really putting their foot on the gas and keeping it there all the way through, outscoring Nebraska by 20 points in the fourth quarter alone.
Right, and you mentioned going into March and into the tournament. What is Indiana's hopes moving forward?
Well, they definitely feel confident that they got the top 4 secured in the Big Ten. The Big Ten's been very competitive all year, especially at the top there, so it's really good, and it's a great feeling for Terry Morin and her squad as they head into what they hopefully will see as a NCAA tournament bid. Obviously, right now they're ranked 22nd in the country, so they really have an opportunity to do some big damage in really the entire tournament as a whole, and the Big Ten tournament is one stepping stone to get to that point, so we'll see what happens.
And on the flip side, the men's team just came off of a brutal loss against rival Purdue. It was another road loss. Brandon, what happened?
Well, this is the 7th in a row that Indiana has dropped to Purdue. They've lost 10 out of their last 11 to the Boilermakers. It's really been an abysmal effort when it comes to this rivalry, which, Connor and I talked about this last week. Is it really even considered a rivalry at this point? After it's been so many years now that they just have not been able to figure out what's going on. Obviously, it's one of the biggest rivalries in sports, but from the Indiana side of things, Archie Miller, you could tell just in his expression at the end of the game, he looked distraught. He looked confused. It looked like a team that just didn't understand why, after such an impressive performance in these last few games, especially against Penn State and Iowa, ranked opponents, at home, they just weren't able to get the job done again here against an opponent who you really felt like you had the ability to do something here that would really cement yourself in that tournament bid coming up next month.
Right, and you talked about these games where they were showing off offensively. What happened? Where did this offense that we saw, like you said, against Penn State go to?
Well, Archie Miller said it best after the game. You can't shoot 25% from the field and expect to win. And it's just not going to work. And they shot 20% from three-point line from beyond the arc, so that's definitely not going to get the job done either. And you really wanted to see a bigger game from someone like Trace Jackson-Davis, who had 2 games in a row where he was scoring in double figures. Now, it's not his fault that they lost. The entire team needed to show up. And, Devontae Green had 11 points, but he did that on 15 different shots. So that's the percentage there is just not where it needs to be. Al Durham really didn't do anything, and they really need to see more as a collective effort. But it was really the defensive end that really started to fall apart for them. Yeah, the offense was bad, but Purdue wasn't shooting the ball that well either, and they still were able to win this one. And they were almost blowing out the Hoosiers. They were up by almost 19 points at one point. So to be able to really figure out this will be a good game for them to learn from this experience, head to Illinois now and see what they can do on the road against another ranked opponent.
Moving forward, we'll have more Indiana basketball coverage for you. For Brandon Schaff, I'm Lexi Vennetti. We'll see you next time.